is 1 to A, and it's just terms. So we're just going to start with a few of these definitions. Technically, they say these are undefined terms because they are not like a physical thing, but we're going to define them as best we can. So a point. A point is a location. It's a spot somewhere. It has no size, which is why they say you can't really define it because it's just not really actually there. It has no size to it. It's just a location that we are representing with a little dot. So when we talk about a point, you're going to write it like this. A point will look like just a little dot, okay? And then we always put a letter behind it. So if I'm talking about point A, it'll look like that. The way you say that is point A. Oops. So this is what it looks like. This is how we say it. Okay, point A. A line is a straight path that extends in two opposite directions with no end. So a line is difficult to draw also because a line doesn't end, but we can't keep drawing a line going on forever and ever and ever. So we just use arrows. Okay, so if it's a line, we're going to do something like this, put an arrow on each end, and then the way we represent it is a line is just a whole lot of points right next to each other so that you don't see any gap, really. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull out two of the points that are on that line. So let's say we have point A here and point B here. Then this would be called line AB. The way we write that is AB, and then you need to put a line over top of it. Make sure you put the arrows when you write it. And we say that line AB. Okay, now there is another way that sometimes they'll refer to a line. Sometimes they'll have like a cursive L just next to it. That could also be line L. Okay, so either a cursive letter next to the line or you use the 2 points and label it with 2 letters. So when you're naming a line, you have to use 2 points, okay? A point is just going to be 1 letter. A line is always going to be 2 points to name a line. Okay. How are we doing so far? Good? All right, then we have a plane, and a plane is really hard to draw in some situations because it's just hard to represent well. But a plane is a flat surface that extends with no end and no thickness. So a plane just keeps going in every direction, a flat surface. So if you think of it as, this doesn't actually make sense because the earth is round, right? But say the earth was square and the earth kept going forever. If you just took the top of the ground and you just kept going with it, okay, that would be a plane. It has no thickness, so it's not like, oh, this is a plane. It's just a flat, yikes, surface, okay? The way we draw it can be a little challenging. Pretty much we just draw a parallelogram like that to represent a plane. And then there's a few ways you can name a plane. You can name it with at least 3 letters, or at least 3 points, we'll say. So if I had like X, point Y, and point Z somewhere on my plane, I could say this is plane X, Y, Z. Now, if there was a W on there as a point also, you could call it plane WXYZ. So you can do 4 letters, you can do 5 letters. The minimum is you have to have 3 letters to name a plane, okay? Any guesses why you have to have 3? Why couldn't I name a plane with 2 letters? Yeah. Not necessarily. Good idea. Yes. Okay, so a line has 2 letters. Potentially, yeah. I see what you're saying with that. Any other thoughts on it? Yeah, Dan.
Well, kind of what she was saying, but like, if it was just 2 points, then there wouldn't be any space for the plane to be going out. It would just be going lengthwise, right?
Not necessarily, but I can see what you're saying with that. Here's the issue. Let's say, I'm going to use my arm, okay? I'll use my freckles. I'm a very freckly person. So I have a freckle here. I have a freckle here, right? I could put a plane through that as my arm. Is there anywhere else I could go through those 2 points? What if I went this way? Right? So if I called it...
With last name J through M. J through M. Come to the attendance desk for pictures. Thank you.
So if I called it plane AB, I don't know if I'm talking about this plane or this plane, right? But as soon as I add a third one, there is only one plane that can cut through those 3, as long as the 3 are not in a straight line, okay? Because if the 3 were in a straight line, then still I could go through 2 different ways. But if it's 3 non-collinear, I'll tell you about that in a little bit, points, you get 1 plane, okay? So that's why we use 3 letters or more. But there is one other way you can name a plane with just 1 letter, and that's if they put a letter on the plane with no point in front of it. So if there's no point, then that P is representing the whole plane that we're talking about. So you could call this plane P. Okay, but that's only if there's not a point in front of the letter, because then it can represent the plane as a whole. Any questions on that? Okay, so how many points do you need to name a plane? 3 or more, right? You need 3 or more points, and then you have your plane. I'm going to write this up here just so you don't get confused. So it's at least 3 points that don't lie on the same line. Okay. All right, so that's planes. The next one is collinear points. And you can see right in there, it's co, like together, and then linear, so on the same line. Collinear points are points that lie on the same line. So if I had this setup, okay, those are collinear points. But what if I said I have this point, and that point? Okay, there is no plane that I can draw through. Sorry, there is a plane. There is no line that I can draw through all 3 of those points. So we would say these 3 are non-collinear. Okay, so collinear in a straight line, non-collinear, not in a straight line. Okay, and same thing goes for coplanar. Coplanar points, that was super fast. Nice, good work. Coplanar points are points that lie on the same plane. So for instance, if I have this setup, now kind of a trick question here, are those 3 points coplanar? It looks like no, because they're not on the plane I drew, but is there a plane that goes through those 3 points? Yes, okay? So be careful with that, because just because they aren't on the same plane that's drawn for you doesn't mean they aren't on a plane, right? Any 3 points can make a plane. I'll teach you about that tomorrow. But just be cautious with coplanar and non-coplanar. I would say, if I did something like this, A, B, C, and D, those are coplanar points, right? They all lie on the same plane. If I did A, B, C, D, and F, do those all lie on the same plane? No. So if we add F in there, those are non-coplanar. Okay, so coplanar on the same plane, non-coplanar, some point does not work with all the rest of them. Okay, or maybe a couple points don't work with all the rest of them. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Wait, so F would not be coplanar?
You can't say F is non-coplanar. You would have to say A, B, D, and F are non-coplanar. Because not saying they are not coplanar means they're not on the same plane. So you can't say F is not on the same plane because you have to say not on the same plane as what, right?
Okay.
F is not on the same plane as A, B, C, D,
Okay.
but F could be in the same plane as A and C, right? You can put a plane through those three vertically. So you need several points to say they are coplanar or they are not coplanar. Okay?
Okay.
I know that gets a little tricky. We're going to try it out. Tomorrow we'll do a lot more with it too, just to try to make sure we're good. And I'm actually going to do an example. We'll just do it right now. So let's say I give you this picture. So this is R, Q, and S on that first line. And I'm actually just going to put a little cursive L by that, so we could call that line L also. Okay, and then when you draw this second line, here's what you have to do. I'm going to go up this way. That's supposed to go through Q, sorry. I didn't draw that very well. And put a point T up here. And then this bottom part of it, make dotted if you're drawing with me. Preferably a straight line. Mine looks curvy, but hopefully you get the point. And then we're going to put an M down there. Okay, so pretend those are two straight lines, okay? We're just going to talk through some of the terms we just used. So the first thing, I want to know two other ways that you could name line QT. Okay, so line QT, can you give me two other ways to name that? My Q doesn't hardly look like a Q, does it? There we go. Can you give me one?
Line NT?
Okay, so you could call it line NT. Because remember, a line keeps going forever. So QT keeps going forever, NT keeps going forever, so it's all the same points that we're using. Is there another way that you could name QT? You could call it line M, right? This guy down here is representing that whole line. So you could call it line M. There's actually one more way. Do you know what the other way is?
Freshmen with last names N through R. Last names N through R. Please come to the attendance desk to have your picture taken. Thank you.
Anyone see the last one? Okay, that's kind of tricky. TQ and QT, because they're the same letters, it's the same thing. So yes, you could flip them, but really you're saying the same thing that way. There's one more set of letters. Is that a hand up back there? Thinking about it? NQ or QN, right? Either one of those. So line NQ would also be another way you could name it. Okay. All right, how about, oh, I never put a P on here. We're going to put a P on the plane right there, just so I have a way to refer to it. Can you name plane P another way? Oh, I missed another letter. Hold on. I'm struggling here. We're going to put a W on there. Okay, can you name plane P without using P in the name? Not plain W, because there's a point in front of the W, right? How many letters do you need? What's your minimum if you're using points. 3, okay? So 3 or more letters. So one way I could name it would be, go for it, Daniel.
Plane RQWS.
RQWS would work. How about RQS? Plane RQS. Why not? Because they're in a straight line, right? So it might be this plane or it might be this plane, okay? How about SWQ? Plane SWQ. Can I do that? Who thinks yes, you can do SWQ? Who thinks no, you can't do SWQ? Okay, you can do SWQ. It's 3 points that are not in a straight line to represent that plane, so that one works. So plane SWQ. Okay, questions on that? Can I use T or N to name plane P? No, those ones don't fall on that same plane as P, right? Okay, how about 3 collinear points? Can you give me 3 collinear points? There's 2 answers you could give me here. Go ahead, Daniel.
N, Q, and T.
Mm-hmm. N, Q, and T, right? Because those are all on the same line. What's the other set of 3 points? That would be collinear. Alyssa. RQS. Okay, so if they make a straight line, they are collinear. Okay. Okay, last one. And then we go to our last few definitions. How about, can you give me 4 coplanar points? So 4 points that all lie on the same plane. I know you've got this now. I want someone else to try. Don't be bashful. It's okay to make mistakes. I like mistakes. I will applaud your mistakes. You're learning. Is it Derek? What's your name? Matthew. Go ahead. RQWS would work. Are there any other 4 coplanar points? Remind me of your name. Jared. QWNS. No. Q, W, and S are on plane P, right? So if you take N with it, so the dotted line, I never really talked to you about the dotted line, did I? Did I tell you what the dotted line was? No. Sorry, I meant to. The dotted line means it's cutting through the plane. That would have been really helpful for you. So if this is my plane P, right? T is up here, Q is here, N is down here. So it's almost like the plane is shielding you from seeing that part of the line. Sorry, that would have helped a lot, huh, Jared? So if that point N is down below the plane, what you can do is take 3 in a line. So like say this is R, Q, and S, right? Would point N down here be able to stay on the plane with those 3? There's no plane that you could put through all 4 of those points. Vertical, right? I could go through here and hit N down here. So if the 3 are in a straight line and then there's the 4th one, you can do it, okay? So like RQSN would work. All right. I know that is a little tricky. It's really hard to see because we're trying to put something 3-dimensional onto a 2-dimensional thing, but we'll spend more time with it tomorrow too, I promise. Any questions on that so far? Okay, a few last terms, and then we're done. When they talk about space, That's the set of all points in 3 dimensions. So space is everywhere all around, right? 3-dimensional, you can go that way, this way, up, down, left, right. That's space, okay? Represents all points. A segment is a lot like a line, but a segment stops. So a line keeps going forever. A segment has endpoints. So it's part of a line that has 2 endpoints and all the points between them. Okay, so if this is AB, we would call that segment AB.
Any freshmen who have not had their photo taken, please come to the attendance office. Any freshmen who have not had their photo, please come to the attendance office. Thank you.
Okay, so here's the deal. With a line, we put the arrows over top. With a segment, we just put a bar with no arrows, okay? So that is segment AB. Does that make sense? You can also say it segment BA. So it doesn't matter which direction you go, but you want to use the 2 endpoints as your letters, okay? So segment AB. We'll just write that so you're not getting confused later. Either one of those is fine. Then a ray is a part of a line, so it's kind of like a segment meets a line. So you have one endpoint and then an arrow going the other way. And this one can be a little tricky with how you name it, just because there is a right and a wrong way. You can't call this ray XY and ray YX. When you name a ray, you start with the endpoint. So this would be ray XY, and you just put an arrow to the right over top. So that's ray XY. But what if instead we did this? So this is C and D. Do you know how you would name that ray? Yeah. Right. So you have to start with the endpoint, not the one that has the arrow going to the side. So this would be ray DC, and then your arrow still points to the right because we started at D and we went through C, okay? So that would be ray DC. Questions on that? All right. Last thing. I'm sorry for all the words. Opposite rays. They are 2 rays that have the same endpoint but form a line. So you're going to have a line. Say it looks like that, okay? Opposite rays share an endpoint. So the only point here that they could share and we can still name 2 rays would be what? What would the endpoint of the 2 rays be? B, the one in the middle, okay? So opposite rays here would be ray BC and ray BA. So starting at B, going to A, starting at B, going, that would be this way for you, huh? A and C, okay? Those would be considered opposite rays. I can't say ray CB and ray BC are opposite rays because there's overlap, right? They share this whole chunk of the line, so that doesn't work. It has to just share the one endpoint, and then they have to go in opposite directions. Questions on that? Okay.